Happy Friday, everyone. We're going to start another new topic today. Some of you may be thinking, how in the world are all these little bits and pieces going to come together for one thing? But it will. Just be patient. Today we're going to look at equations. Normally we look at one-step equations and do adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. But today we're going to have to do a just quick study of multiplication equations and hopefully just kind of get the basics of it and enough that we can do what we need to do in the next few weeks and then come back and study equations in more depth a little bit later. So for an equation, we have two equal mathematical expressions. So we're always going to use an equal sign. And for what we're going to do today, we've got a process or some way that we have to make these two sides of the equal sign equal to each other. Now, remember when we did ratios the other day, what we did to the top, we did to the bottom. We always wanted to keep everything consistent, or when we're simplifying, we always divide the top and the bottom by the same number. The thing is to keep everything consistent and equal. The hard part is they don't always look the same, or they very rarely look the same, and that's what makes it confusing. So we're going to think about money real quickly just for a second. We've got 2 dimes and a nickel, which is 25 cents. And then we've got this quarter, which is 25 cents. They look different, but their value is equal. So that's kind of like what we're thinking about with equations. Again, here we've got 50 cents, 2 quarters, and then we've got 5 dimes, which is still 50 cents. They look different, but they are equal. So when we start with these equations, we're going to do a few really simple ones that you can do in your head, and then we'll come back and talk about how we actually solve them. So I'm sure most of you can look at this. What this is saying is 2 times x. X is just a variable. It can be some number, and our goal is to figure out what that number is. So 2 times some number gives us 10, which most of you, I'm sure, are saying, well, that's 5. That's easy, which is true. If we look at the next one, 4 times something gives us 12. Probably most of you are already saying that's easy. That's 3. And then for the last one, 5 times something. Now, I changed it to a W this time because sometimes we get so used to seeing X's for our variable or our letter that we get confused when we see a different variable or letter. So I want to make sure that that doesn't confuse us. So again, what times 5 equals 15. So I will go back up here to the top. If I say 2 times 5, that equals 10. So both of these values are equal, even though they look different. Same thing here. If I say 4 times 3, I'm going to get 12. They look different, but they are equal. Okay? So now if I go back and think, I could solve this in my head, but in a few minutes we're going to solve some problems that most of us cannot do in our head. So what did we really do to solve this problem if we didn't know the answer? 2 times something. Well, if we didn't know what that was, the way we work that backwards is the opposite of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide both sides by 2. And we have to always, what we do to one side, we do to the other. Always keep it balanced. So 2 divided by 2, it leaves us just plain x. And when we do 10 divided by 2, that's how we get 5. Even though you could solve it in your head, we need to understand the math behind what's really going on. So 4 times x. So the opposite of multiplying is dividing, and what we do to one side, we do to the other. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, which leaves us just this x. So then 12 divided by 4 is 3. You may have done a little bit of this last year, but you probably didn't do a whole lot, especially getting, since we were left early due to the pandemic, coronavirus, all that kind of stuff. So 5 times something. Again, we want that variable by itself. That's our goal, to figure out what that is. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. We're left with just plain W, because 5 divided by 5 is 1. And W and 1 W is the same amount of W's, and that's going to give us 3. 15 divided by 5 is 3. So now we're going to do, if I wanted to check it, we've already said that 2 times 5 was 10, and 10 equals 10. That way we can just look at it and see that they're equal. If we put the 3 here, 4 times 3 is 12. We've already said that, but I'm just going to write it so we can see it and not just say it. And then 5 times 3 is 15, so 15 equals 15. So we can see that they are equal. All right, so now we're going to get a little bit harder. It's not going to be too hard, but most of us probably cannot look at that and tell exactly what that answer is. So if we use our little handy dandy calculator, it says 13 times E. So the opposite of multiplying is dividing. Our job is to get that E by itself. So we're going to divide by 13 because 13 divided by 13 is 1, and that's how we get just that plain E. So we're going to divide both sides by 13. So if I, on my calculator, 156 divided by 13 is going to give me 12. So now if I go back up here and substitute 13 times 12, I hope it gives me 156. If it doesn't give me 156, then I've done something wrong. So the good thing about these is we can always check them. So 13 times 12, and that does give me 156 if I put 12 where that E is. So we can always substitute and double check our work. Same thing here, it's 2 times J. So the opposite of multiplying is still division. We're going to divide both sides by 2. 2 divided by 2 is going to leave me just plain J. So I've dealt with this side. Now to deal with this side, we're going to do 16.2 divided by 2, and that's going to give us 8.1. So if I substitute in for that J, I'm going to rewrite it. So instead of putting J, I'm going to put 2 times 8.1. And I hope that that gives me my 16.2. If it does, we're good to go. If it doesn't, then we need to try again because we've done something wrong. And we do get 16.2, so we know that we're good to go. All right, on this one, 14 times D. So same concept, divide by 14. 14 divided by 14, I'm left with just plain D. And I double check that, 252 divided by 14 gives me 18. So if I check it, I want to say 14 times 18. And I want to make sure that I get 252. That's just a way to know that I got the right answer. So 14 times 18, which is 252. So we can always double check. Divide both sides by 6.2. That cancels out because 6.2 divided by 6.2 is 1. So we're left with just 1 W, or W, whichever way you want to say it. I usually just say W instead of 1 W. 93 divided by 6.2. And that gives us 15. So if we wanted to check our answer, it would be 6.2 times 15 and make sure that gives you 93. And that way you know you've got it right. Now this one looks different. If we look at the ones we've been solving, we've got a number and a variable, and it's equal to another number. Well, this one, the variable's on the opposite side. What I suggest you do is take this, the equal sign, and the number, and move it over. So I always just rewrite the problem, 7a equals 623. Most of the time, people make fewer mistakes if you switch it around. And now it looks just like what we're used to, so all we have to do is divide by 7. And a equals 623 divided by 7. Did I punch that in right? If I did, then 623 divided by 7. Nope, I didn't think I punched it in right. I thought I gave whole numbers. So we've got 89. So if I checked it, I would say 7 times, and for A, I would put 89 and make sure that gives me 623. So I would do 89 times 7. And I do get 623, so I know I'm right. Okay. Let's take this apart. Again, this one looks backwards. So I would take the 4.2R and I would put this all on this side, equals 88.2. All I did was take this part and move it over. So now it looks like what I'm used to seeing. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4.2. 4.2 divided by 4.2, that cancels out. And R equals 88.2 divided by 4.2. That's going to be 21. So now to double check it, I would do 4.2 times 21 and make sure it gives me 88.2. And as long as I get 88.2, I know that I am right. And I think we are down to the last practice problem. And it switched back, so my variable's on the left side, so I don't have to do any changing around. I just go straight to 16.4, dividing both sides by 16.4. So now I've got 147.6 divided by 16.4, and that gives me 9. So to double check it, 16.4 times 9, and I hope it gives me 147.6. And it does, so I know that I am good to go. So I am happy. Alright, I hope y'all have a good day and a good weekend, because it is Friday. And I will see y'all next week. Have a good weekend.